Welcome, Terrence. How's it going?
Going good. Good to hear from you again.
Always great to hear from you. Though, to be perfectly honest,
Thank you.
I
Thank
don't
you.
know exactly what I'm doing with this one, so it's all just gonna come as it will. But the
Totally
general thought,
freeform. I dig it.
but the general thought is I'm comparing Marvel, MCU Thor, and God of War Thor as just sort of practice for however it's gonna go in the future. Are you familiar with these two
As
guys at
someone
all?
who is, yeah, I'm familiar with both of these guys. As someone who is familiar with the Norse, with the mythological Thor and these two guys, this should be a pretty interesting compare and contrast. See what matches up to the legend, how they're similar to each other, what matches up to the legend, and what is just wild, writers wilding.
The legends that I'm sure that they heavily researched.
Or in the case of Marvel, kind of looked at once or twice.
First thing that come to mind with Thor, at least in terms of what he is type of hero.
Oh yeah. Now this is actually really interesting. I've been reading a lot of the Norse Eddas lately,
Hmm.
and Thor is pretty much their example of it, their shining example of what a god and a hero should be like. Thor is in the myths. Thor is strong. He keeps his word. Like Thor is never recorded as having lied, not once.
Mm.
He is bound by his oath, and he is defined by his loyalty to his friends and family. These are all ideals that the Nords were very big on.
So basically, the people at the time's idea of the perfect man.
Yep, this is who we should be like. We gotta be more like Thor. That's why so many of the that's why so many Vikings had names that were Thor something, Thorvald, Thor Good, Thorvel, Thorkel. You think I'm making these up, but I'm not. These are all real names.
I think I knew a Thorkel back in the day. And hmm, and when we look at these two, I say MCU. I guess from start to where he is now, starts out. I guess arrogant, bit of a show off, quick tempered, not stupid, but a bit basic. And God of War Thor is more, how do I put this? Well, it's God of War Thor is that basically they're evil there, and then he
Well,
has
yeah,
the
yeah,
negative side of just his drinking.
yeah. Well, the dude is going through a depression since Kratos kind of murdered both his kids in the last game.
Yeah, though he probably wasn't too nice before.
That is true. Now, about the temper, that is something from the edits that we see. Although Thor was a hero, he did have a vicious temper a mile long, which was seen as both a good and bad thing. It's good to be able to go into that righteous battle fury, but it's bad if you're unreliable to your allies because you can snap at any moment. Now, so that's something that that's something they both get a point for in that department. That's something they have in common, and that's something they have that is based on the myth. We give them that one.
Hmm. Now, background, I believe, goes a little bit more towards God of War Thor, since I believe in the MCU is both his mother and father are gods, but he's half a giant in God of War, which I think is close to mythology.
Yeah, in mythology, his mother is not Frigga, who is Odin's wife. In Norse mythology, Thor's mom was named Jord, which is a name that means earth. She is basically the Norse equivalent of Gaia, which is why the comics version of Thor probably has Gaia as a mother, despite the fact that Jordan and Gaia are two different people, and Gaia is Greek, not Norse. But whatever. We will deal with that another day. But yeah, the personification of Earth. She is a giantess and the mother of Thor, as I mentioned before. we don't have a lot of information on her besides those three things.
Yeah, MCU decided to go and just make her God and God of War pretty traditional, and you can just tell by looks because God of War Thor is a ginormous man.
Oh yeah, yeah. MCU was like, look, we're not getting into all this. We already have Loki here. We don't need more complicated family dynamics. Just make him Frigga's kid.
Yes.
Because they looked at all the problems in the comic and they're like, we're gonna simplify this.
Next, so I guess I
Yeah,
somewhat we lean towards God of War Thor for that one.
yeah, yeah. God of War Thor gets the point for that one.
Yeah. Next is I
Mm,
guess
mm.
designs. We start with sort of equipment. I would say their weapons pretty much function this exact same way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So one of the issues we have is we don't have an exact description of Mjolnir, so either one could be accurate. All we know about Mjolnir is that it was a hammer with it was a hammer and it had a shortened handle because Loki interfered with the handle. Which of course he did. He's Loki. Honestly, what are we expecting from him? And both of those represent that really well. It's a short hammer with a bashing head and and a short handle, and it looks like it hurts people. Oh, obviously the MCU version looks more like a mallet, whereas God of War Thor's looks more like looks more like a battle hammer. But either way, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't really matter. We don't get a full description of what Mjolnir ever looked like in the myth, so it doesn't really matter.
Can it use? Do they have lightning powers?
Oh yeah, in both, Thor was the god of lightning, and it was said that the lightning responded to his commands. So both of them having lightning powers makes sense. Again, thunder and lightning is kind of Thor's domain.
Isn't this something that's worded something along the lines of Thor's hammer always strikes true, or he never misses, or something?
Yeah, yeah. The idea was that it always struck true, and the idea of it returning to his hand is more of a modern invention, but I like it.
Yeah, it's a handy trick.
Basically, it is a super handy trick, especially when you spend so much time yeeting it at people.
Oh yeah, I guess it would take up some visual time to have him throw it as hard as he can and then just kind of jump over and get it again.
Yeah, yeah, that's not as visually interesting as it returning to his hand.
Next is I think something that they both lack is the gauntlet.
Yeah, so in the original myths, Thor had iron gloves called Yamgripper and a belt of strength called, I can't freaking pronounce that. It is a very Nordic name. Megingjordur. That's as close as I'm getting. Megingjordur. So the iron gloves, Yarmgripper, were explained that Mjolnir is so powerful that even Thor has to protect his hands from its power or he could shatter it, which is also an indication of how strong his sons, Magni and Modi, are, because although there's two of them, neither of them needed the gloves to wield it.
Hmm.
And as I mentioned, the Megingjord was his belt of power, which doubles his strength. That's exactly what someone who is already strong enough to punch holes in mountains need. An amplifying artifact. The MCU and God of War just kind of conveniently left that one out too.
Now I will, from looking for as I can, Thor, Thor in God of War doesn't have it, but he does have some rings, but those aren't really explained to be anything. But you can perhaps guess.
Yeah, yeah. So they're probably not it. We're
Yeah,
not going to give him we're not going to give him the point if it's not explicit.
yeah. It, and you also see in the very first time we see Thor, I believe in God of War 2 trailer, he does have a shiny belt, but it is not shown again in the next games.
So
Probably just
maybe they were going to put it in, and they're like,
yeah. I was gonna say the same thing. They were probably gonna put it in, but design wise, they figured it doesn't go in with the story.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, while we're talking designs, we obviously gotta address the elephant in the room. All right, so MCU Thor is a blonde and is usually clean shaven.
Wait.
Like he does have
Before
the
we get to
beard.
that,
Like
what was I?
okay, go ahead.
I can point out that well, we rarely see him wear it. MCU Thor does actually have the belt. It is
Huh,
mentioned
I actually
by
didn't know that.
it is mentioned by name in one of the movies, and Tony Stark does at one point had it, so he does at least have the belt.
Okay, so I guess we're going to give him that point for having it, even if it's mostly off screen.
Yeah, yes, the hair. Get to the hair.
All right, let's go. So as I just mentioned, whew, okay. So MCU Thor is a blonde, and he's usually clean shaven.
Mm-hmm. Usual.
Usually. Uh, no. That's the entire conversation. Just so in the Eddas, Thor is described as having flaming red hair and a large beard. The dude is supposed to be the embodiment of Nordic, Slavic, fiery energy. So they made him a redhead with long, wild hair. Well, being fair,
Also,
the issue
comics books.
might
I
be more
forgot.
from
Yeah,
yeah,
comics books. He has
yeah,
blonde
the
hair.
comic. Yeah, the comic Thor has blonde hair because Jack Kirby decided to make him a blonde.
Yeah, you gotta go back and ask the late great Jack Kirby about that. We'll never know.
And for the record, like the reason why I mentioned the hair thing is because in most of the saga, not only is he described as red-haired and red-bearded, one of his epithets, you know how gods always have those big epithets after their name, like how Athena has gray-eyed Athena or Athena of the Shield and blah blah blah.
Mm.
Thor, one of his epithets besides the Thunderer and Giantsbane was Redbeard. Oh, so yeah, that's another point we're going to give to God of War because I mean, you have eyes, you see it.
Yeah. I guess a slight controversy is, I guess, the size between these two.
Yeah,
I would
so this
say,
one's actually a little tricky, and I can. Oh, go ahead.
MCU doors like a slightly modern depiction, just a really big, muscular dude, and God of War Thor
He's cut.
is
Oh, yeah, so yeah, he's cut. He's like
very
sculpted,
cut.
cut. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I used to say back in the day, he's swole.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, while God of War Thor is a big, giant, almost sometimes sort of not too human because I really actually looked at him. He is a wide, like almost kind of monstrous looking dude. Like his
Yeah,
head
like
is
you can tell that
ginormous.
underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can tell underneath all that fat is a lot of muscle, but people are just focused on the fat,
I
which
say he
just
does
doesn't.
have that classic look of like a guy that you could tell back in the day was probably pretty ripped. Like in his football days.
Yeah, yeah. So here's an interesting thing, and I have a controversial take on this.
Sure, go ahead.
So the God of War version,
Hmm.
besides the fact that Thor's let himself go because we murdered his kids and he's depressed,
Hmm.
I would actually argue would be a better representation of a wealthy Nordic warrior than Chris Hemsworth version. Now I'm gonna no before anyone executes me in the comments. First off, the idea of a layer of body fat to protect your muscles and organs would be seen as a good thing as long as you're not so fat that your chainmail doesn't fit anymore. Which, from what we've seen, what was implied about him in statues and stuff, that's how he generally looked. He still had that belly in the statues. It was just smaller, and you know, he looked more like one of the guys in the statues and stuff. He looks more like the guys you see competing in the world's strongest men competitions,
Okay.
which works.
Now,
Which works
here's
for him.
my
Go
interpretation
ahead.
is I looked as far back as I could to get the earliest depictions, and
Hmm.
you're not gonna get much more than like totems, pretty much. That
Yeah,
don't really
exactly.
give
They didn't
a
really do a
solid.
lot of statues.
Generally in speaking, with any kind of gods, they almost never give a description.
Yeah, this is true.
I would say
The
as
only reason why we
close.
have so much information on the Greek gods because they kept building statues all the time.
Yes. And even then, the statue is probably just an interpretation of what they think he should look like.
Yeah,
So I would
yeah,
say,
exactly.
in terms of accuracy, if you just have a guy with red hair, white, and looks intimidating, you're about 99%. It's in terms of accuracy. Like it's hard to fail between there with what we got. Though I
You just need to have a guy who looks like he can. You just need to have a red bearded dude who looks like he can knock you out. There you go. That's Thor.
yeah, I'll say both sort of that's cross. Though I will say that I think some people do mix this up. There's a difference between a strong man and a what's that other one? Dang, I had it right on my. There's a difference between a power lifter,
Bodybuilder.
bodybuilder. Yeah, the difference between a bodybuilder
Is
and
that the one you're
a
looking for? A bodybuilder.
power lifter. Yes, and a
Ah,
power lifter is like 100% just strength. But
yeah.
I think
Whereas
people get
bodybuilders are more about the aesthetics of.
I think
Yeah.
people get a little bit
Hmm.
confused and thinking that's the best physique for combat,
Yeah.
which
Yeah. Which no.
usually is not. Like you ever seen? I think he might literally be called Thor. That
I
guy.
know the guy you're talking about. The guy who played the mountain. Yeah,
Yeah,
the guy who played the mountain. Yeah.
he basically challenged a guy, another power lifter, or at least another big guy like that, and he had to change his physique down to get an actual fighting shape. So to me, that also showed the difference
Yep.
between being strong and being the best fighting shape for yourself. Now you can look like either and still
Or yeah.
fight, but there's definitely an extreme that you can hit where you do need to calm down.
Yeah. Like after a certain point, you're like, oh, okay, you're compromising your agility and speed for all that with all those muscles.
Yeah. That being said, he does look like he can pick up and throw down a hammer really hard.
Yeah, that one.
Physical appearance wise, it almost doesn't matter. As long as he
Yeah,
looks intimidating,
it's
pretty much. Though I will
look
say God of War
if you
Thor
can.
doesn't look like he could fool giants in a wedding dress.
No, he does not.
No.
I can actually see Chris Hemsworth's version pulling that off a little bit better than the God
A
of
little
War
bit better.
version. Yeah, like again, you're still relying on giants being very drunk and very stupid, but you
Yes.
get a little bit more leeway with Chris Hemsworth. What else in their designs? We could talk about their armor or lack thereof.
Yeah. Thor and Mythology have a name armor besides like the gauntlet and stuff.
No, no. So we're gonna have to judge this on what Vikings would wear.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
obviously they both lose on what Vikings would wear, but we're going to have to do some artistic interpretations here.
Yeah.
So while obviously neither are very accurate, I feel like God of War Thor gets a little bit closer to accuracy because we see a lot of chainmail and leather armor, which is what most Vikings would use. These are not knights; they would not be using plate mail. So the problem with the MCU Thor, with many of his outfits, are just any of his three outfits. Like the sleeves are chainmail, but I'm seeing a lot of plate here, and they don't really do plate. And then his current outfit, the blue and gold thing, has just abandoned all chainmail aesthetic. So, one of the things I do want to mention, of course, to give a negative to God of War Thor is his whole chest and stomach is exposed, and unless you're a berserker, they didn't really do that. Like unless you were a berserker and weren't wearing armor, it was either put the damn shirt on or take the damn shirt off.
Yeah. So he's like
Not this half. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, either you go butt naked or just put on some armor.
Yeah, exactly. We could
Unless,
also make
unless
that
the
joke for Thor being sleep. Oh, go ahead.
I say unless he really wanted to show off a weak point, like try it. I dare you, try it.
Oh
I
yeah,
know you see it.
maybe that maybe that was the point. Maybe he was like, maybe he was taunting Kratos, like, yeah, look at all this exposed flesh. I'm not even guarding my heart. Do something. Do something. No balls.
He recorded designs of Viking helmets, right?
Yeah, there's not many. The winged helmet. So winged helmets are kind of a thing that you see in a lot of mythology, but the winged helmet that we see that Thor wear for like 10 seconds in the first movie before it gets destroyed and just never puts on a helmet again.
Where he actually,
Not
technically, he
really a
puts on a winged-like helmet when he becomes a gladiator.
Oh yeah, he does that too. But yeah, that's more of a thing that the Romans started doing when they started adapting Norse heroes. That's not something you would see in Nordic mythology itself. Like, for example, it's one of those things like because the Romans were like, "Oh, winged helmet. This is the symbol of Hermes, the hero. So why don't we put put it on these people's heroes too?" Because Romans. But yeah, that's not really a thing in like Norse mythology or in Norse battle. From what little we've excavated from Nordic helmets, they were usually a lot more practical and not as show offy. Because they were raiders, so they'd be like, we need something that'll protect my head from an arrow. So yeah, the horns and wings you see in Viking helmets, not really. The most they would do is like, I got the perfect metaphor. If you want to imagine a Nordic helmet, you would
Hmm.
imagine Griffith's mask from Berserk without the extra long beak. Does that make
Nah,
sense?
yeah, I get what you're saying. I was looking up. I don't think God of War Thor has it.
No, but then again, the guy is like spends 90% of his screen time drunk.
He
I'm
probably lost it
surprised he managed to find the rest of his armor, and he didn't even find the shirt.
sometimes.
Yeah, so that shoulder pad is actually really interesting. I like the designs on it. Like, I can't prove that that's something they would do, but what I can prove is those tattoos are actual Nordic runes on his that you can see. Those He has actual Nordic runes tattooed on him, which is a nice little touch.
Oh yeah, it is.
Now, obviously, MCU Thor does not have Nordic runes tattooed on him, but he and Loki both speak um Danish in Thor and in Loki, which
Oh,
makes
so
sense
it's not
because the
just
Danes
gibberish.
are descended from Vikings. The Danes are descended from Vikings, so that makes complete and total sense why they would speak that language. So that's another couple of points, which I don't think we hear God of War Thor speak anything other than English, but that might just be translation convention, and they could all just be speaking ancient Norse, and we just
And
hear it
we
as
just don't
English.
know.
We have no way to prove that.
Nope.
Hold on one second. There's one thing I want to say. So, God of War Thor is 7'4". I just want to point that out. That man is big for no reason.
Well, he's a part giant. It's like his Zebir.
Yeah. Whereas if we assume Thor is the same height as his actor Chris Hemsworth, he's 6'3". So again, I feel like God of War Thor is representing that half giant blood a little bit better.
Yes, but let me
Like, don't
twist
get me
the.
wrong, both of them are bigger than me.
Oh yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
because something I remember seeing. Loki from weighs uh 525 IBS according to lore.
525 pounds?
Yes. So I believe I don't know if we got Thor's, but I believe What they have here is they are, while they look normal size, they are incredibly like
Oh yeah, they're very dense.
they're
So
dense inside.
that's not supported in the yeah. So they're very dense, but that's not really supported in the myths. But it does bring up a point I wanted to bring up and didn't know how. It's something that we see in both MCU Thor on the occasions we see him eat and God of War Thor. They both have the mythological Thor's appetite because Jesus Christ, that man can pack it away. That man ate a whole ox during a wedding feast, and I'm just like, how do you just sit there and eat the entire ox?
So, so of course, he's the most impressive thing he's done. It's not eating, but uh, partly drinking the ocean.
Oh yeah, that was wild. He was like, you just drank enough of the ocean to lower the sea level across the planet by 3 feet. How? Okay, I need you to leave my house now.
If you wanted to,
It was
probably could
pretty
have
wild.
drunk all the alcohol in the world.
No, if he wanted to, yes, and we would have no way to stop him.
No, no.
Um, so we can probably compare their warrior abilities from what we see from both of them, and that would be a good way to wrap it up because he is a warrior god.
Yes, though I will say what we have not is battle with the Midgard serpent.
No, I think since Surtur already showed up and blowed up Asgard, I don't think we're ever getting the Midgard Serpent
Nah.
there.
God of War Sword, though, it's a little bit in the lore and a little bit, see a little bit in the fight. It's not really important
Yeah,
to anything, but
yeah,
it's a
but
nice.
it is a nice nod. Now, one of the things I noticed is that MCU Thor fight like don't get me wrong, they're both very good fighters. MCU Thor uses his hacks a lot more, and he fights a lot more like a modern day warrior, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like, for someone who's supposed to be this ancient 1500-year-old god, he fights like a guy who practices HEMA.
Well, I guess there's one way you can look at it as maybe a guy that is that old. Maybe did some point sit down and say, I guess I will try to learn all of the martial arts. I guess
Yeah, maybe.
it depends on
Whereas,
ego, I guess.
yeah, whereas with God of War Thor, we definitely see a lot of that more Viking style fighting style, like
Hammer go
lots of
boom, right?
yeah. Just hammer go woom. The body slams he was hitting
Oh
Kratos
yeah.
with. Now I'm not saying either one is a worse warrior than the other. Because being fair, we never get to see either just go rolls off, fighting at their full potential. They're always held back by something, either their morality or the fact that they've been drinking for the last year and a half straight.
We never actually see their peak technically.
Yeah. Yeah, like even with Thor, like the entire Thor movie is about him reaching his peak, and then then we only get a glimpse of that peak in Love and Thunder before he decides to talk no jutsu Gore instead. And then in God of War, again, he's been drunk off his ass for the last year and a half. His beard's a mess, his hair's a mess. He's put on extra weight. I mean, he still beats the living shit out of Kratos, but
Oh yeah.
we know that's we know that's not his full potential. So that's just one of the things that I feel sorry bad about that we never get the full Monty on either of them. I was saying that no that's what I wanted to end on, like hearing them as
Alright.
warriors.
Alright. I
Yeah.
think in the future I will actually write down which points and how many points we went to. So for now we'll just
Yeah.
end with our general thoughts.
Yeah.
I guess I'll
So
start with
my general
mine
thoughts
since mine's the
go ahead,
least
go ahead.
interesting because you're the mythology guy, and I just did
Mm,
a little research before I came out. But I guess
yeah.
and I think they do well enough with the research. Though
Yeah.
though if I do wish MCU Thor was a redhead, but like I say he got teamed up with great Jack Kirby. I say it's a draw for now.
Yeah.
Here you go ahead.
So here's my thoughts. While while I do agree that God of War Thor is slightly more mythologically accurate, my favorite will always be the MCU Thor. Well, MCU Thor is my favorite because I'm such a fan of comics Thor. He kind of gets grandfathered in. But the main point I want to make is, as we always say in these things, just because something is more mythologically accurate doesn't mean it's better. And even mythology itself isn't always mythologically accurate. Like, these things are hundreds of years old, and if you walk 10 feet in that direction, the myths change. So don't get too hung up on being completely accurate.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I agree. Like, there's a good reason why we have so many adaptations of Sun Wukong the Monkey King, and they're all so different. It's because the story itself being accurate to the story itself isn't as important as being accurate to the theme.
Spirit of
Mm,
the character and idea.
yes, exactly. As long as you get the theme of the character right, then you're allowed to take liberties. It's artistic license.
Though small, close dollar details are still always fun. One day
Oh
they
yeah,
will.
they
One day
are, and
they
I
will
love.
start wearing a gauntlet.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be hilarious. People freaking out seeing a Thor wearing with the gauntlet and belt, and they're like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, do you want to borrow my copy of the Prozetta? Because
All
I can
right,
explain it, or you can read the Prozetta."
all
Right.
right, that was fun. But would who would you like to do next, and what things do you think we should add?
Oh well, we've already started, so we have to do a dissection on a couple of my favorite Herculeses,
Oh yes, that'd be great.
because we have.
That does.
Huh,
There's a
there's
lot
a
of
lot of
there's a lot of
there's a
versions.
lot of
Holy
adaptations
crap!
of Hercules. Yeah, there's a lot of versions of Hercules we gotta get through because they just keep adapting that, man, and we gotta choose a couple.
Yeah. You ever see that the old Lou Ferrigno Hercules?
I have seen the old Lou Ferrigno one.
Oh yeah.
Ironically, that one's probably one of the more mythologically accurate, which is
Yes.
the
Even
sad part.
yes. Even though I feel like, if I remember right, they had to have some futuristic robots or something that I kind of
Yeah,
vaguely
yeah.
remember.
They have this whole Yeah, I remember. They have this whole science versus magic deal that was complicated for no reason. And I'm just sitting there like, guys, it's Hercules. Big guy smack monster.
Yes.
There's also the Arnold Schwarzenegger one, Hercules in New York, but we're not gonna
Nah.
we're not gonna
We
do that
we
one.
can skip some. We can skip some.
Yeah, yeah, there's a bunch we have to get through, and some of them we're just gonna be like, yeah, no. Look, if I
There's
have to tell
enough
you
to do a
Hercules in New York,
giant tier list actually.
yeah, 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 just a big thing of Herculeses. Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah. All
All
right,
right. All right. This was great. Please like, submit the
all right.
bell,
It's good.
and later, everyone.